Okay, guys, so the next section is the Shape the Path section of Switch by Heath and Heath. We've already covered Direct the Rider, which is more our rational side. We need directions, specific information, motivate the elephant, that emotional side of us, how to capture that large piece of our motivation on why we should make this change, and then and shape the path. So if we've got the other two and still things aren't working, what in the environment is keeping us from moving forward? So within Shape the Path, there's three sections that we're going to go through: tweak the environment, build habits, and rally the herd. So in Tweak the Environment, what looks like a people problem is often a situational problem. So that's that fundamental attribution error, that the people are bad. That's just a bad guy, a bad girl. They won't do what they're supposed to do. You know, we're speeding in traffic. You know, we're running through doors without looking, for other people. What is it about the environment, though, that is causing this behavior? So we want to make the right behavior easier and the wrong behavior harder. So what's holding our people back from making the changes that everybody thinks are right, everybody's emotionally attached to, but for some reason we're still not moving forward. So really, a couple really great examples: the medication vest with the nurses, which they hated, but it alerted the rest of the staff that the nurses were giving out medication and they couldn't be disturbed, because those interruptions, those distractions were causing errors in the medication process. So this ability to keep the nurses focused significantly improved the survival rate of the patients. We weren't making the same, critical errors. The couch in the classroom. So this is about the kids that were perpetually late for class. And the author goes through a bunch of different scenarios that could have happened. And instead, what the teacher does was they bought a couch and put it in the front and said, the first people here get the couch. And suddenly the kids are on time. Quiet hours for programmers. This is a great one. This is something that I think a lot of people can appreciate, especially me. The idea of, just a simple interruption to the thinking that's taking place, especially in a programming environment where, it's very complex, and just the slightest disruption can just kind of throw off the whole thinking pattern. This happens for writers as well. I'm in the process of working on a dissertation, and I can tell you that trying to just close my door and make sure nobody interrupts me is really important when you're trying to think through a concept and you've got this complexity in your head and all of a sudden you've got this interruption. So these quiet hours were designated so that programmers could specifically spend time in that deep thinking state and truly improve the situation they were working in. And removing voicemail at Rackspace. So this was a crazy one. I also teach customer relationship management. So the idea of leaving a voicemail for people and never returning it, I mean, that's just nuts. But I guess, it was a long time ago. So I'm glad that they did that and that they just let the phone ring so people had to pick it up. That's, pretty simple when it comes to customer service. But I'm glad they, made that change in their environment. So, and then build habits. So again, what looks like resistance is often a lack of clarity. So we've got to script those critical moves, make sure that people understand what needs to be done, and make it simple and straightforward. So one of the good examples in the book was the wearing of the safety equipment in the plant. So everyone wears safety equipment when in the plant. This is one of those things where, there's a lot of interpretation. I'm too cool to wear safety equipment. I'm not in a place where things are dangerous. And they just took away all the excuses and said, if you're in the plant, you need your safety equipment on. Stand-up meetings. This was the general who was, I think it was deploying troops into I don't know, I can't remember which war it was, but like 550,000 troops had to be deployed. So it was all about urgency and, not wasting a lot of time. And so he instituted stand-up meetings for a status check so that everything was quick. People understood that the culture was all about getting people, moving through this and just, kind of give us the bullets and let's move along. All of these habits set a tone for a cultural change. And then calming the children down. So this was the principal who inherited a school where they had lots of issues with the community and the culture in the school, and the children would come to school pretty rattled from leaving their home life. And the first thing the principal did was to get them into the cafeteria so that they could all sit down and start to pay attention and calm down and get ready to learn. So all of these, changes in the environment that would help them build habits for a more effective performance. So action triggers, I find these to be really helpful when I'm trying to get things done. So I'm going to do this when that happens. Making lists of things and making sure I know what I want to do and when and what the circumstances are, help me to kind of move forward, so that lack of confusion, the ambiguity that could be there if I'm not sure exactly what it is that I want to do next. And building in those action triggers helps me, to have habits that are performance-based. And how to make a habit, advance the mission, and make it easy to embrace. So again, these are just not habits for the sake of habits. These have a very specific reason for being there. So especially when you think of like the stand-up meetings, advancing the cause of the effectiveness of moving these troops, and easy to embrace. We're just going to stand here. And putting on safety equipment when you walk into the plant. And remember, she put like cardboard cutouts with people with safety equipment, so it was easy for people to see what was expected of them, and build habits that just took away all of the ambiguity of whether or not this pertained to them. Use a checklist, remind the rider, making screw-ups less likely. So again, even when we want to do the right thing, we're behind it, we've got an environment that that helps facilitate it, we built a habit, but how am I supposed to do this again? Having a checklist for how to get things done. And I think we can see that like in doctors' offices and things like that, where people are reminded they have to wash their hands here, and because sometimes hand washing techniques and things like that help people to remember how to do things properly. Rally the herd. So we look to others for cues. That smoke pouring into the room. You can sort of just picture yourself in that environment, right? You're looking around. It's like, anyone noticing that smoke? Does that seem like a problem? Even like my husband and I kind of ran into this just yesterday, where we take a walk every day, and we take our dog with us to kind of just get out of the house, right? And we're walking along, and there's this older gentleman in front of us, and he's got this kind of rickety walker, and he's just moving along, but he's going really slow. So we just think, okay, we're going to just take a wide berth and walk around him, because we don't want, our dog Quinn getting too close to, people, especially, older people that might be, alarmed. So we walk past him, and all of a sudden we hear this like crash. The walker goes down, and I turn around, and the man is on the ground. And I kind of look up really quickly, and I see all these people standing far away looking at the old man, but nobody is walking toward this gentleman. And so I just start running toward him, drop the bag with the poop that I picked up for the dog, and just start going toward this man and help him up. And, as I'm getting there, there's 3 other people with me now. Okay, so the lady that was just standing way over there watching, she's right next to me. The guy that I didn't even notice, he had come from across the street, runs across the street, grabs the other arm of this man. But nobody's moving at first, right? But once they realize, okay, this is the right thing to do, let's go. So we do look to others for cues on what it is we're supposed to do. I thought the example that they had in the book was terrific about going to dinner and not knowing what fork to use. I do try to teach my children that, so I'm hoping that they're one of the examples at the table. But the elephant is constantly looking for support, right? The elephant's not super confident, and he's always looking for reinforcement to do the right thing. So they had a lot of great examples, the stooges in the audience, laughing at the right times, the little plaque in the hotel about reusing towels, reviewing manuscripts in 5 weeks, just kind of setting the tone that says, we're going to do this, and then making people feel guilty when they don't live up to it. So that herd mentality that, I want to do the right thing. Everybody else is doing the right thing. Why am I not part of this? We want to be part of that. So they had a lot of great examples. The fact that obesity is very prevalent among friends and family. You see this behavior and you say, this is okay. This is what I should be doing. Putting money in tip jars. Designated drivers. I thought that was a terrific story. I don't remember that. It is certainly in my lifetime, but I don't remember that happening. But I do remember that all of a sudden, everyone's doing designated drivers, but I don't remember it on TV. But it did sort of come out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden, designated drivers are a big thing. And then the Patakis. I thought that was a really great way of changing an ingrained but dangerous culture. And pretty elaborate too, getting things like that into a script, getting movie makers and people like that on board. I mean, that was a tremendous effort to change what was obviously a very dangerous culture. And then safe spaces to support reformers. So this is a really good one. Cultures always have reformers in them. There are always people who want to do the right thing, want to move forward, understand and appreciate the relative advantage of an innovation. But oftentimes they are surrounded by the naysayers. And you've got to find a space for them to build support and support one another, provide that underground resistance. So of people that are believers, like this is the right thing to do. We've got to get the rest of the people on board. And the idea that it made a difference between two different hospitals doing, basically bringing on the same type of technology, the same type of, of change, was pretty significant. And I have seen this myself in the technology space. I've seen it work well, and I've seen the reformers not get the safe space. I've seen, the status quo guy show up for every meeting, start looking for ways of shutting down these reformers and taking away this safe space and killing projects. So, the reformers know, the status quo guys know how to do this. So as reformers, you've almost got to be more aware of the fact that you are a group of reformers. We need to find a place where we can kind of support each other and get this going. Because I think a lot of times these things happen unconsciously. So we're not a group of organized reformers moving forward and finding, places to hide to talk about these things. We're just a group of people that just happen to be able to, the story in the hospital, it just happened to be, a different process that allowed these people a space to gather and to talk about this reform. So, as change agents, we've got to recognize, be consciously competent that this is happening and work the environment to a place where, you've got this safe space, that these reformers have a way of building momentum and getting the rest of the herd on board. So just to kind of review, under that conditional context, we've got, tweak the environment. When the situation changes, the behavior changes. So change the situation. Building habits. When behavior is habitual, it's free. This doesn't tax the rider. The rider doesn't have to think about it. This is just, what we do. And we get the change automatically. So we want to look for ways to encourage habits and then rally the herd. Behavior is contagious. Help it spread. Find ways to, to get that done. So what does the environment require or allow? So in your projects, what is the environment? Is it supporting what you're trying to do, or is it preventing it? And if it isn't allowing it, what are the existing habits and what might be getting in the way, and how can we change them? So, so this is just one quick slide to talk about switch and diffusion theory. So it's kind of funny because the title of this slide, I took this from the other professor, and it used to be switch versus diffusion theory. But the way that I look at it is switch is really a way to interpret and help us to understand the complexity of diffusion theory, right? So relative advantage is, great, to understand what that means and the impact on innovation, but how do we make that work for us? So follow the bright spots, right? The bright spots are the advantages that are associated with that innovation. Script the critical moves. So that is remove the complexity or help people understand that this is compatible with, where they were before, and point to the destination. That is trialability and observability. What do we see in the future? How do we see the work, the work happening? So when you think of diffusion theory, this is a really substantial theory. This has been around, since, a long time. Everett Rogers' book, like we talked about earlier, was written originally in 1965. A lot of these examples go back that far. Diffusion innovation continues. We see some changes in, like we talked about earlier, in the shape of the curve, becoming, potentially with the different types of communication, more R-shaped versus S-shaped. But the way that I look at switch is it helps us to understand how this diffusion theory takes place. And if we're not just going to let it happen on its own, how can we influence it? Switch helps us influence diffusion theory and shape that S-curve, hopefully, into something a little bit quicker. So I want you to look at it that way. So switch is a lot of different strategies and just different stories that help us to understand how the diffusion theory takes place. And that's it.